Hi, I'm Christopher Warnock of Renaissance Astrology, and today I'm going to talk about why the academic approach is probably not the best methodology for practitioners. So it seems like if you come into the esoteric area, it seems like there's a choice between either taking a modern sort of new age approach, which is like you learn in 15 minutes, you make it up as you go along, you sort of stitch together a whole bunch of different stuff. You think it's a unique personal approach, and it ends up being like the 10,000 other people that are doing it. So it's a very kind of loosey-goosey, like I said, unsophisticated sort of approach. So people look at that and they say, I don't want to be like that. I want to take this seriously. I want to have a rigorous approach. So the other alternative appears to be following an academic methodology, and that has a lot of abstraction for people. I mean, academics are part of the elite. They have the prestige. They're the ones that essentially establish the truth, and they're the sort of high priests along with the scientists of our society. And so the problem is that, again, and this is what we're going to talk about in the video today, that the academic approach, at least in my opinion, I think is not the best way to learn about magic and astrology if you actually want to practice it. So I'm definitely not saying that the academic approach is wrong. It's incorrect. It's great for academics. I mean, if you're in that world, if you're in that milieu, that's the methodology you want to approach. And again, it's rigorous, it's scholarly, it has its methodology. That's all good. But again, my basic point here is to say, look, it's probably not what you want to be following if you want to learn about magic and astrology in order to practice them. So let's just step back a bit. These videos that I'm doing recently have all pretty much had in common what I call metastructures. And the metastructures are sort of the underlying forms of things. And we always have a worldview. We have various methodologies that we're using and heuristics that we're using. And that's always true. Nobody is independent of them. Everybody is using a particular methodology or in a particular worldview, and they'll use various heuristics. And so the key is to be aware of them. There's nothing wrong with this. It's not like there's some objective way we can act without having that. We always have to use it. It's like an operating system on a computer. You have to be, it's Windows or it's Apple or it's Linux or whatever, but you need an operating system. And when you know that operating system, you know something about, what it produces, and also you can't operate outside that operating system. So really, again, what I analogize the operating system to is worldview. And I, again, start my courses talking about worldview, and very often a lot of these videos I'm starting talking about worldview because it's the most basic bedrock sort of metastructure that we deal with. And so worldview is your conscious and unconscious view of reality. Okay? It's not just your conscious philosophy, but it's sort of automatic assumptions on how things work. And in fact, it is your reality. So then within the methodology, within worldview or typically methodologies, these are sort of, connected ways of doing things, like sort of, interconnected, methodology is a way of accomplishing things. I mean, like you think about surgery, for example. This is a particular methodology for operating on people or getting things done, and they have a whole body of knowledge and method and things that work within that methodology. And so methodologies generally conform to a worldview. Usually they're controlled by your worldview, but it may be incompatible. You may have a situation where someone has a methodology that conflicts with their worldview. It's actually very typical of 21st century and again 20th century thinking as well, is there's a tendency to compartmentalize, and so people will be doing things that don't really make any sense in terms of their underlying philosophy or view of reality. As I was saying, methodologies are sort of the under worldview, and then the third thing would be heuristic. Heuristic is sort of like a guide or rule of thumb. A good example is a scarcity heuristic. It's like, say, buy now, we're selling out. It's like, oh, wait, we better buy it quickly because it won't have many left. So that sort of guides our, well, it's running out, let's get that one. Another heuristic would be the most expensive is the best. So you go into the store and you want to buy some kind of chocolate. It's like, we'll buy the most expensive one. That would be the best one. So it's not like it's wrong, but it's obviously not, taking a long, careful look at everything. But you have to have these guidelines and rules of thumb. You can't get through the day without using heuristics. So again, these are typically part of worldview, often can be part of methodology, sometimes incompatible. But for the most part, they're going to be controlled by the worldview. Again, if something isn't real, then it's probably not going to be used as a guide for, as a heuristic. So as usual, again, I will start with worldview. The modern worldview is atheistic materialism. So in other words, the basic view there is nothing really exists except matter and energy, and equals mc squared. So, energy equals mass. So basically this is the same. So this is not saying that there's just no God. That's, I think, how people generally think of atheism as like sort of non-monotheistic. It's like, no, that means there's no God, no spirits, no angels, no demons, there's no soul, there's no spiritual energy or spiritual anything. So to the atheistic materialist, a spiritual basically means psychological. Psychological then means brain function, okay, which is then electrical impulses and chemical reactions, which are just molecules, which then resolve down to atoms and then to subatomic particles until they find some new subatomic particles or whatever. So basically everything can be explained by the interaction of these subatomic particles, and that's all there is to reality. So again, atheist materialism tends to be reductionist. There's also a tendency towards nihilism, which is just to deny that there's any inherent meaning in things. I mean, again, it's random, bopping together of these subatomic particles, these certain forces, and other than the specific physical laws, everything's going to be random and there's no meaning. So again, this is all part of the milieu that we live in, sort of the ocean that we swim in as modern people. And again, the academic methodology, as we're going to see, fits within atheistic materialism, at least the official ideology. So when we're looking at an academic approach to things, I think the first thing we're going to start with, again, like I said, there's nothing wrong with the academic approach, but and again, it's very rigorous and logical when it's done correctly. But one of the things they start with as part of that methodology is that they're coming from an objective standpoint. In other words, they're very careful about being too involved with something. They're keeping their distance there from the actual practice or practitioners. I mean, they're standing back, they're going to get some objectivity about it, they want to see what's happening, and if you start doing it or you're too involved with it, then you're losing your objectivity, which is a bad thing. You're becoming subjective. Now, in sociology, there's such a thing as participant observers, who go out. I've been really enjoying some of the stuff recently. I read a book by a guy who was a sociologist who became a prison guard at Sing Sing and talked about his experiences there. I know there was a professor who's also a garbage truck driver and one of those, the brooms that street sweepers, truck driver in New York City. And so both of them were very interesting. They were able to combine that objectivity of seeing it, the system as a whole, individuals separately, and then also actually having done it. So that gave them a really interesting perspective. But for the most part, there really is a reluctance to become too personally involved or personally knowledgeable about the actual practice of things, because there's this idea that you're going to lose your objectivity. Now, definitely when it comes to history, you don't have people practicing it. I mean, I don't think there's a sense you can go out and make history yourself. So this is going to be true for almost all academic approaches, is that there's a desire to be, like I said, separate from things and to look at it as an outsider and not have that insider view of things. And that's, I think, a problem in terms of wanting to learn something practically, is that having that lack of practical experience. An interesting example of how this actually is quite useful to have that practical experience is a book called, I've been reading recently, called Domestic Revolution by Ruth Goodman. And this is a history of the effects of the changeover in England from burning wood to burning coal, both for heating and also for cooking. So this caused a really incredible changes in the furnaces and the architecture and the kind of food that people are eating, recipes, things like that. It was a really major change. And the author, because she was so knowledgeable in actual traditional wood and coal cooking, she'd done housekeeping and things like that, and had worked in, and sort of as a participant observer historically, she had a really excellent understanding of it, as well as a lot of, sort of more traditional academic sources or traditional primary source materials that she was able to draw on. So she was able to have a dual perspective of the actual experience, almost archaeological, along with the traditional historical approach of looking at primary and secondary sources. So the next problem, though, comes from the academic approach to when you're a practitioner of astrology and magic. Now, the problem with astrology and magic is, like I said, the academic approach, it fits within atheistic materialism. So it officially denies the existence of the spiritual. So it denies that magic and astrology, which rely on spiritual causality, are actually real. And the immediate reaction is to say, wait a second, I know this academic or that academic, and they believe in this, or they practice magic or astrology. The problem with that is that those are individual views. It's a bit like saying, it's okay to be gay in 1950 in the U.S. government because I know a couple gay, guys who are gay or women or whatever, and they work for the government, so it's actually okay. It's like, no, that policy was very discriminatory at the time, and if they found out that you weren't heterosexual, then they would toss you out as a security risk. So the fact that whatever people's individual views are, that doesn't reflect the overall official view of academia. And that view continues to be that only the spiritual does not exist. So you could not publish a peer-reviewed article, for example, saying that angels actually exist or that magic works for real. There's maybe some con to it or some physical explanation for it. But if you come in and try to say spiritual causality is real, that spiritual is real, you're not going to be allowed to publish that article. And maybe things are changing a little bit. There's a sort of warming up to it, but that's still true in academia. So this is an immediate problem for a practitioner because obviously if you're practicing astrology and magic, you're looking for guidance on how to practice it, you think it's real. And so really, again, what's also conditioned by this view of the lack of reality of magic is that books of astrology and magic to the academic are treated as fictional. It's sort of like a novel. So what we're going to do is we're going to find the author. I mean, this is fake stuff. It's not real. Someone wrote it down. That's where it came from, and it came out of their imagination, right? Or maybe they read someone else's made-up imagination and used it, but it's all imaginary. So we need to get the original author. So we find the original author, and then we determine the definitive text that they wrote, because that's the source. I mean, that's the only possible source is their imagination. So we find that definitive source, and then we trace the derivation of it. And then we can also look at, the social effects or whatever. But it'd be ridiculous to think that this works because this is fictional. Like I said, it's like a novel. I mean, Faulkner, we don't actually think that there's a whatever, the county, I can't pronounce it, he was dealing with it. Those people didn't really exist. We're not going to actually look for them and find them. If we wanted to find more about them, we couldn't go look it up, in the graveyard. We couldn't ask for another historical, a diary of that person because this is an imaginary person. We only can look to the author. We have to look to that source. And so this is where this sort of obsession with the original source comes from, because that, again, is the only possible source of the information, is the author. But in fact, we're actually worse than a novel because the author either was a credulous fool for believing that magic exists or was deceitful and was knowingly tricking other people. So again, there's always going to be sort of a stench to this stuff because everybody knows it's fake. So again, you find the original and definitive text, trace their derivation, and again, you want to find the original. And so again, the purpose of the academic is not to understand how to actually do astrology and magic, because that's impossible, right? But to understand the social phenomena around it. For example, a good example of this is Keith Thomas, who wrote a book called Religion and the Decline of Magic. So he's an academic, an English professor in England. He wrote this book about, it's a very, voluminous book, lots of detail about all sorts of spiritual things it's basically the 17th century. But his key question was, how is it possible for what otherwise appeared to be rational people in the 17th and 18th century to believe in such foolishness? And so things have softened a little bit, but that still basic approach that this isn't really real. And I've seen some authors that are more sympathetic to it, but they still have to kind of tie themselves in knots in order to try to satisfy this view, that atheistic materialistic view, that it's not really real. So you have to come up with some sort of explanation that never really holds together in terms of it, because these are incompatible. If astrology and magic really work because of their spiritual connection, then that's completely incompatible with an atheistic materialistic mind view. So it's interesting. So going to an academic sort of expert, right, on astrology and magic or for guidance on the actual practice of astrology and magic is like going to a cooking expert for guidance on making pancakes, and they've never cooked a pancake, they've never cooked anything, they've never eaten a pancake, and in fact they don't even believe that pancake exists. So you can imagine how useful or informed they would be as far as guiding you to actually, making pancakes. And I think this cookbook analogy is very useful for practitioners. If we think of books of astrology and magic that were written, say, previous to 1700 by practitioners for people to practice, it's a cookbook. I mean, it's got recipes in it. It's explaining how to do something that really exists that this person has actually done. I mean, hopefully. So, for example, if someone came to you and said, like with a cookbook, said, well, you can't use the 1975 Joy of Cooking pancake recipe. You can only use the pancake recipe from the original 1931. You'd say, wait a second, that doesn't make any sense. I mean, I've used that recipe. It works perfectly well. The pancakes taste great. And in fact, I think it's an improvement over the 1931. I mean, people have been working on this. They put their heads together. They've actually improved it. And we've had you could call it an evolution in the use of it. So, I mean, I think that that's a much better model for actual practitioners, is that if you think of it as a cookbook, it's created by experienced practitioners for other practitioners. It gives you guidance and advice. Clearly, they think it's possible to cook things, and they've got a lot of experience doing it. So that seems like a much better guide and a much better teacher for a practitioner. The other thing about a cookbook approach is it sort of frees us from arguing about the original. I mean, because we can look at all the variants as being useful recipes, as being potentially good at producing the effects that you want to approach, and we don't have to have this sort of argument about it. We can recognize that if we say this is a better one than that, it's a matter of preference, and we can test that by actually looking at the results. I mean, we can still be scholarly, we can still be rigorous, we can still have a deep knowledge base about what we're doing, and obviously that's going to put us in a better position than someone who's just read it on social media for 15 minutes or zipped through one New Age book. But nevertheless, as useful as the academic approach is for academics, it does make sense that it's not the best approach for practitioners. And in fact, that we need to separate off to new methodology. Now, for a long time, all that was available to us was this sort of dichotomy between this New Age, loosey-goosey, anything goes, not very knowledgeable approach, and the academic approach. But now we have a third choice, which is to go with serious, rigorous, scholarly, but a practical approach from somebody who actually thinks, yes, this works, it's real, and they've also practiced and experienced it. And so that's been kind of my model, is to try to be rigorous, but actually approach this as a practitioner of something that really is real. So I hope that's useful. And again, all of these are models. Each of them is going to make sense in its appropriate perspective. And there's not a right or a wrong way to do this. It's really what is most effective for the perspective and for the purposes that you're going from. So again, like I said, I hope that's useful, and I look forward to thinking and talking about more of these metastructural ideas in upcoming videos.